All right, so I'm going to show you Combustion 4. How many people here are familiar with Combustion? Okay, excellent. It's kind of sad since our headquarters is here in Montreal. And obviously, this is my first time in 4 years I've ever demoed this product in Montreal. So something's wrong with that. But first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about Combustion in the motion graphic field. And I also want to show you compositing. Obviously, this is a Final Cut Pro user group. And there's other great products like Motion, which I highly recommend. If you're using Final Cut Pro, the cost of Motion is so ridiculously affordable. I always recommend that. And if you're using After Effects, I want to tell you, think about possibly adding this to your tool set. So what we have here is a motion graphic piece, as I was saying. And the key thing I want to point out is that Combustion, people always ask me, like, what is this? Because if you know Autodesk, Discrete, we have Flame, we have Flint, we have Infernal Smoke, these $500,000 systems that are used in Hollywood and television. Well, Combustion is our Mac and Windows compositing special effect program. And it's kind of like if you took After Effects, Illustrator, Photoshop, put them all into one program, put them in true 3D space. Then you, just for fun, you took Flame's Keyer, Color Corrector, Tracker, masking tools, and grain management, and threw that in there also. Then you have Combustion. And you're going to see that in the next half hour. In fact, this graphic piece you see playing back here was originally an Adobe Illustrator file. Since Combustion has its own full vector-based drawing program, we can do things such as import Illustrator files and Photoshop files, and we work very nicely with Adobe products. So, for example, if I came here and I want to go to my footage source, you're going to see here's an Illustrator file. There's all the file formats that I can bring into Combustion, pretty much anything that's an animation, video clip, or a still. But if I bring this Illustrator file into my composite, what's going to happen is Combustion is going to recognize there's layers, vector objects in that Illustrator file. And it's going to ask me, what do you want to do with those? Do you want me to merge those and flatten those, or do you want me to maintain that vector control? And I'm going to tell it I want to maintain the vector control, just to show you this. Now what happens is Combustion creates a whole new layer, and if I expand that layer, we can go down to the actual paint, which I will elaborate on in a minute. But these are the layers that were created in Illustrator. I am maintaining all vector control. These, I can come in here, and if it's great for taking your company's logo, it's all vector, so it takes the Illustrator file a little bit further than even what Adobe After Effects does. But let me get rid of that and move on. So the concept of this little demonstration was this opening piece was supposed to have about 20 different clips of people who use Combustion just really quickly running through. And normally what we would do if you're doing some basic editing is you're going to go out to Final Cut Pro, you're going to go out to Adobe Premiere, Avid, or whatever you're using, and you're going to line up all your clips, put your dissolves and so on, and then bring them into Combustion. Now before I even show you this, this is never intended to eliminate Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro. It's a very basic editor that's in Combustion, and I've actually seen people trying to edit like hours of clips, and I'd say no, use a product that's designed for it, such as Final Cut Pro. But I want to import another clip. This gentleman's name is Eric DeHaven. He's from California. Does a lot of video and commercial work, videos for music for using Combustion. What I'd like to do, though, as I said, is I'd like to place him in that area, that green area there. What I'll do is use what we call a set matte operator. I'm sorry, a stencil layer. All that means is I can go to any layer and I can tell it to use another layer as its alpha source or luma source. Pretty standard stuff. But I'll choose that matte layer, and now I can take him, position him where I want him to be, and then start to scale him down. The thing is, my matte and my video clip are independent of each other. But here's what I was saying. I want this clip to end at frame 30 and dissolve into another clip. Instead of having to step outside, if I'm doing some basic editing, I can do it right here in Combustion by applying one of the many operators, this one being the edit operator. When I apply that, you can see I have a very streamlined editing tool. If I come over here, we can do such things as trimming the head of this, trimming the tail, or whatever you want to do to it. You can do cuts in different segments. Again, this isn't like some groundbreaking technology I'm showing you, but it is kind of nice that it's inside your compositing program, where if you're just doing basic editing, you don't have to keep stepping and getting into different programs. What I'll do now is go to the end of that frame, and I'll say import footage, and we'll take another clip and we'll bring that in here. So now we've just created a straight cut Again, nothing that fantastic or amazing, but the fact that I'm doing this in Combustion does kind of open up your eyes, hopefully, to the potential of what you can do. I can do swap edits such as this. I mean, I want to take the hand clip and move it to the front. We want to trim that down 20 frames or so, and then we want to just do a simple dissolve. Like I said, they're pretty basic. We've got dissolves, slices, and wipes. We'll do a dissolve. I can set it to be 20 frames, 25 frames, click insert, and now I've got a dissolve of the 2 clips. The key thing to keep in mind, though, is that these are individual segments still, which means we can do operations to each one of them while they're still inside this edit operator. So, for example, if we look at this clip of this gentleman, Eric DeHaven, maybe I'm not happy with the color, and maybe I want to add a little more contrast, bring a little more hue to it or something. Well, I can select either one of those elements right in my workspace panel over here, go to my operators, and apply something like a discrete color corrector. Now here's where, again, the technology from Discrete's legacy, Flame, Flint, and Inferno, Combustion artists benefit from it because this is the Academy Award-winning color corrector that is in Flame, Flint, and Inferno, and I've got it right here on my Mac. So it's great that I have the same technology coming in from our higher-end systems into our compositing program, Combustion. So let's just say I make an adjustment like that. Key thing to understand is that is only affecting that clip, okay? Understand that's what I'm trying to really demonstrate is that this color corrector is applied only to the Eric DeHaven clip. We have all different types of controls in your color corrector from basics. Here's histograms, like I said, same as Photoshop. We call them histogram, it's called levels, curves, ranges, all these different controls within this. Let me just reset this very quickly. All I want to do is take my saturation up a little bit, and I'll maybe take my contrast. So I'm happy with that. Now let's talk about this hand clip because it has its own set of issues. And again, that color corrector is not affecting that. I'm going to double click on this to enter that video clip in my viewport. And let's just play this back a little bit. A couple things you're going to see that are wrong. First off, don't worry about it being a little too short. That's okay. But we have that camera movement happening in the very beginning. Picture your X and Y jitter that you have. A little bit of scaling. You want to eliminate that. We can use the tracker in Combustion to get rid of it. And as minor as it is here, let me zoom in, zoom over. This guy really should stay out of the garden on the weekends and stay in your computer where you belong. You're a compositor. Don't go out in the sunlight. Dangerous. But you can go here, let's paint this out. Let's fix this with some paint tools. Maybe it's a boom mic, wire removal, your ex-girlfriend's in the video, you want to get rid of her, you can do it in Combustion pretty, ex-boyfriend, I didn't mean to be sexist. You can do it very easily inside of Combustion. Let me select this and go to our operators again, and I'll apply a paint operator. Now, like I said, this is like working in Illustrator or Photoshop right in Combustion. I have all different paint brushes, different vector-based shapes you can create with our solids, text tools. What I'll do here is just create a elliptical shape. We'll change it to yellow so you can see what I'm doing. We can click and create this shape, and no one will know that person had a bandana, a boo-boo there anymore, right? Now, we want to take that, and we want to make that have footage inside of it. By default, it's solid. It can change the color, do whatever you want to it, animate that, and that's great, again, for motion graphics. But I'm going to choose clone for my style of object, and now, just like I would be in Photoshop, I can come here and get my picker, and I can click and select any pixels I want, not only from this clip, but from any other clip that I want to go and access and place it into that vector-based object. The next thing, if we play this forward, obviously, it's not following along with it, right? Well, I can manually animate that if I want, but then again, that would be silly since the product will do it for me. If I come over here with that selected, and I go to our tracker, I turn on position, you'll notice I get my tracker marker. I'm just going to say analyze that forward and let it go. Combustion is going to go frame by frame by frame, and it follows that. When it finds that it's done, I turn it off, my little paint object now follows along perfectly. Picture, like I said, painting out a boom mic, anything like that. Graphics, moving across. The other thing I want to mention, I always refer to Flame, Flint, Inferno a lot because I personally cannot afford one. They start at somewhere around $500,000. Just so you know, Combustion retails for $1,200 Canadian, $995 US. And everything I'm showing you is out of the box. You're not seeing any plugins that you have to buy or add. But I want to go and I want to soften the edge of this little object here. So instead of having feathering, just a simple equal amount, I'm going to choose what we call our edge gradients, where I can go and feather the inside and the outside independently if I wanted to. Or the other thing, which is way overkill in this case, is called splines. Not only do you have control of the shape itself, but you have vector control of the feathering for the inside and the out. That's much more powerful when you're animating something that's moving and you want your feathering to be very tight in one area and very loose in another area. We'll just leave it at in and out and be happy with that. Question?
Yeah, do you have a rotation point that you can?
Yes, Bezier, yes. If you go, if this is a Bezier shape, which means that I can select that Bezier shape, and I can go in, and whatever I do to it, it's just like your normal shape.
No, on the tracker, I mean.
On the tracker. On this object, you mean?
Can the tracker rotate? Yeah, can the tracker rotate?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I did a one-point track. You can track as many objects as you want. And what you'll do is...
The question is it a 2D or 3D tracker?
It's a 2D tracker. It's a 2D tracker, but what you can track is scale, rotation, and position.
Okay. Or both of them, or?
Or all of them, right, at one time.
Okay.
What you'll do is it'll give you two trackers. The first one's going to be X and Y. Second one is going to be the distance and the rotation changing over time.
Is it 1 point or 2 point tracker?
It's both. It's a 2D tracker, but it's a I can track two positions. I mean, I can track, I'm trying to say something.
So it's a 2D 1 point tracker.
If I wanted to track, 1 second, let me show what I mean. If I want to track this clip, I can go to the tracker, and then I can say, let's track the, select this guy, position, rotation, and scale. Now I have two tracker markers. One will be for the X and Y, and one will be for rotation and scale. Does that answer it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's go back here now. So the next thing I want to talk about is that camera movement that we see happening, right? So it's pulling away a little bit. This is kind of drastic, but just picture even the minus X or Y jitter or rotation or scaling. So we're going to use the tracker again, but this time we'll use it with what we call a stabilizer to eliminate the movement. So I'll go back to my operators with the second section selected, and I go to my stabilizer, and again there's a 1 point or a 2 point. I'll just choose the 1 point for right now, and we go to there, and let's just take the stabilized point and say, what do we want to remain perfectly stable? So we're saying that this area, these pixels, should remain stable. Then when I go back to my tracker, I turn on the position, and I just make sure my tracker marker is where I want it to be, and it is, and say analyze that forward. Combustion, again, will go through the frames, store the data, and now what you'll notice what it's done is if I zoom back, it has stabilized that and shift my footage so that that area will always remain perfectly straight. So that's a great way of getting rid of that little bit of jitter that you might see inside your video clip. Now in this case, you know, because I'm in this composite, and that's inside of a mat, I'm never going to see that black edge along the side. But if you're working and you can't have that, you don't want to see that, I just went back here. What you can do is we can go to, maybe we should see it, go to the stabilizer and tell it, instead of shift, do a fit, and Combustion will automatically scale your footage according to the amount of jitter that you have offset it. All right. Remember, all that was being done on that edit operator, and the whole point of that was I'm trying to explain that I can now add operations on top of this if I wanted to, such as a color correction. So if I go back to my operators and we throw on a color corrector, it's going to affect everything on that edit operator. So if I tint this into the green, it's going to affect, obviously, the two clips, the little Band-Aid, the track data is going to affect the dissolve and all these other things. But what's really nice is, again, if I go back to my edit operator, everything in Combustion is non-destructive. So all of a sudden I realized that this clip really should have only had a 10-second dissolve instead of a 25 frame. I can go in here and change this at any time I want, and then it will just update, and everything else that I've done in the pipeline will update automatically. Any questions on that?
What is the longest time the sequence can?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The length of a sequence as far as time, is there a limit?
Unlimited. Unlimited. What you're always doing is storing into RAM. To get real-time playback, Combustion has to store information into RAM, just like After Effects, Digital Fusion, or Motion. So what you can do is you can change viewport quality settings if you want to, so I can fit maybe less quality, more clips into RAM. Or you can do different proxies of each individual piece of footage. So maybe this piece of footage has a lower res, and I'm working on the higher res footage. And when I go to render, I can automatically set it to always use the high-end rendering at the end.
And is there a limit as far as the number of corrections you can have in the clip?
I can have as many as I want. You can unlimited amount of footage. I've seen compositors with hundreds and hundreds of layers and operators on these things. Obviously, it's all going to depend on your computer speed. You know, how fast is the computer, how much RAM do you have? Combustion takes full advantage of dual proc. I'm very excited because I'm actually finally getting a dual Intel Mac laptop coming to my door. I've had the 17-inch, it works great, but I'll take the dual over this any day. And it's not official, but I can let it slip by accident because it was mentioned at the at the user group in Las Vegas. We are working on our new build of Combustion 4, which is OS 10 compliant, and also for the Intel platform, and we're seeing speeds of up to 50% improvement in speed compared to what I'm doing right here. So we're really optimizing it to work on OS 10 and the new Intel platform. The other thing I just want to mention is that although everything in Combustion is 2D, it's a 3D environment, and if I go to a multiple viewport really quick here, I can have as many views as I want, and I can take this viewport and say that I want this to be a perspective viewport. Now I can zoom back, and I can rotate around, and you can see that everything is in 3D space. Here's my camera. I can animate this to move around if I wanted to. My layers can all be in 3D and stuff like that. And there's lights and lights. So if I turn on my light, I tell it I want you to use the lighting. I can use shading and shadows and so on. And then I can go to select my light, and I can do things like make it a spotlight, change its size, a cone angle, all softness, all these types of things like this. So even though everything's 2D in the program, it is in 3D space. Did you have a question?
Yeah, what about importing objects in 3D?
It's not a 3D object. I cannot import a 3D object.
You cannot?
No, everything is always a 2D in here. Now, I don't have time to really get into it, but the integration with 3ds Max and now Maya also, who else did we buy this week? I don't know. But you're going to see tighter and tighter integration with these other products. There's things you can do called RPF files where it's not true 3D objects, but you have operators to make it look like it was and work with it as if it was.
Because Combustion is just like effects from Discrete.
Yes.
Okay. It was possible to import 3D objects in there.
In effect?
Yeah.
No. I disagree with that. That's what I used to use was Paint in Effect. Well, you never could get a 3D object in. You never could get mesh.
Yes. Yes, you could.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember that though. I would be surprised they took it out.
But you could. Okay,
Are you talking about, maybe, I know it could be done in Flame.
well, it could be done
In Effect also?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not, I don't remember that, but
SGI.
I have been wrong before. It's unbelievable. I know it's kind of shocking. Ask my wife. Wrong a lot.
That's why I asked that, because I was wondering if you could import 3D objects.
That would be a lovely thing to see happen. I would agree with that 100%. All right, I got time for another demo here. And this was more a compositing one. And I like showing this one because I actually worked on this. This was, I don't have, well, let me just open up. I'm going to open up the end result and show it to you very quickly. And then we'll see as I try to build it. I'll build it live so you can see exactly what happens. So here we have, so the concept of this was from EA Games up in Vancouver, actually. I went up there and spent a week with them working on this. They have several seats of Combustion. And it was part of their cinematics for one of their games. They wanted a very Sin City look. They wanted to have all the people inside of it, live action footage in front of green screens. Everything in the background, though, is going to be either very flat painted looking or 3D objects out of Maya. That's what they used at the time. So we have the scientist who is sitting here in front of the computer. This robot arm supposedly cracks the glass. The toxic fumes comes out. He gets poisoned and goes on a killing rampage. I'm so glad there's no violence in games. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, so I'm going to show you how this is built from scratch. So let me just undo this for a second here, if I can. And here we go. It started off with just the back plate. This, again, is just a still image, okay, running throughout the entire composite. But I want to start doing things like put a color corrector on there. That's pretty straightforward. So we'll throw a color corrector on there. And I just want to tint this thing green. So everything's going to have this kind of weird tint green back there. Now let's import another element. So I go over to my media. And inside of here, I have this robot arm. So let's take that and bring that in. And now I want to tint that. Well, this is really cool. This thing called copy and paste. You ever heard of it? I want to copy this color corrector and just paste it on this one so they match. Now, I want to go and I can create a mask very easily if I wanted to make this look like it's behind the glass. But what's going to happen is I got several different elements that I need to have behind that glass. So we're going to create our own Luma mat right here in Combustion that we can reuse over and over again, okay? So what I want to do is duplicate that back plate and use that as a reference. I'm going to step into what we call our schematic view. So here's our schematic view, and all this is a data flow chart of what you're working on and all the things you're doing. But I like to show this in here because this is something that I see people using the product and not using it efficiently. If I copy and paste anything, it obviously has multiple copies of it. It has to be rendered and cached twice. But if I'm going to duplicate this, I can take the red out point of that, drag it over to my composite, and just say, give me a new layer. That means I have multiple layers with independent transformation and operators using one piece of footage. It's just a more efficient way of doing it. So now what happens is I've got this new one on top, and I can step in here and let's name this. What am I doing? Matte. Uh-oh. Matte. Okay, let's name this Matte, and let's go add a paint operator on here. So once again, just like I showed the paint tools before, we're going to create some objects. Again, they're all vector, but let's go and say we want a black rectangle. So I just click and drag my black rectangle to create it. And we get it. We can change the size. Again, all this could be animated if needed to be, but we don't need to. I'll turn that off temporarily, and I'm going to go and get a Bezier tool. And I want this to be white, and I'm just going to click and drag a shape around this area right here. So we're going to just create a Luma mat as the concept here. And then we can hold down some options. Let's duplicate that. Let's step back to control point mode and just reposition this one the way I want. And then we're going to need one more object. So let's create this, close this down, and close this down. And I want to create one more object. Actually, I'm sorry, those should be black also. So let me fix that. That's what happens when you're demoing a different product at NAB all week long. Forget how you learn this one. But let's go back here now. What I want to do is create one more object. This one will be white, and it's going to be the area of the glass. So we just go like so, and I drag that there, and I drag this here. And the whole concept of what I'm trying to do is, as I said, whatever is going to be white is going to be transparent. Whatever is black is going to be, no, opposite. The white is going to be opaque and black. So let's drag this down there. So this is my Luma mat, okay? So now let's step back to the composite level, and I can select any layers like I did before. I can even turn that layer off, you don't need it on. But I come here, I'll tell the stencil to use that matte layer in the Luma. Now I can take this layer and move it anywhere I want. It's always going to appear as if it's behind the glass. But the best part is that I can use that matte now over and over and over again, okay? The next thing I want to do is create a smoke effect in that back area, like smoke is rising up. But again, because it's in the background, I need to make sure it looks like that same painted smoke you see there. So I'm going to use that background once again. So I go back to my schematic to demonstrate this. Let's take the color corrector this time. I'll drag that and say, give me a new layer. So now I've got a new layer on top, and we can go back out, and I'll name this smoke, again, just for organization. And I'll add a paint operator to this also. But this time, I'm going to use my paint like I would be doing in Photoshop. So I can get a paintbrush. You know, if we wanted to, I can select the paint, then we can pick a color, and I can paint, and we can create an object. Keep in mind, combustion is vector, so that means if I switch that to curve, I can come in here and we can animate this shape anywhere we want, okay? But that's not what I want. I want, again, footage inside of there. So I get my paintbrush, and we set everything up the way we want, but this time we say we want it to be a clone, just like we did earlier. I can zoom in now, and we can bring down our brush size a little bit. Let me jump over to my brush here, take the size down like so. That's better. Hold down my Alt key and say I want these pixels over here. And this is the same thing you would probably normally do inside of Photoshop. You're probably familiar with that. But the big difference is these are all vector again. So this means if I did need to track this, if I needed to make any kind of adjustment to it, it's a vector object that I can reposition and put anywhere I want. So let me just finish this off very quickly. Okay, good. Now I've got all these paint strokes here. I also want to paint out this back area, create transparency there. My Luma mask is going to take care of the rest of this, but I want to paint this back area right there, get rid of that. So again, I'm just going to select the paintbrush. I'll set it back to being solid, make it black, and tell it to be an erase tool instead. Here's all these different options my paint tools can be. It could be a smear, it could be a highlight, it could be all these different transfer modes. We'll choose erase, and let me come and drag my, wrong button, sorry. Just paint away. And I am painting transparency. So if I jump over to my alpha mode, you can see what I'm doing. Whoops, sorry, transparent mode. So you can see I'm actually painting transparency. Okay, so let me go back here and select that guy, put it back to an erase, and finish this off quickly. Okay, I'm not going to be overly picky. Look at how fast I can paint. Amazing. Okay, now let's go back to the top level. Let's select all of our brushes. I need to extend their duration to the entire length of the composite. That's done with just a hotkey. It's very quick and very easy. I believe I did it. Did I do it? Come on. Yes, I did. There they are. Now, let's tell that layer also to use that same matte. Remember, the Luma. So that's back there now. And because it's its own individual layer, I can come in here now, take the opacity down a little bit, soften the smoke effect up, go to the Transform tab, enlarge it so I make it larger, and now I can animate its position anywhere I want. So let's say we put it down here, turn on this Animate button, and for After Effects users, that's like the stopwatch. But in Combustion, once you turn that on, anything you change will now be animated. So if I say I want my smoke to be down here, and then we go to the last frame, and I can say let's take it and just drag it up this way. So now I can see I can keyframe that over those frames. I'm going to drop my viewport down to medium so it caches in just a little bit faster for us. So now you can see I can cast that in fine. Next thing I want to do is create that crack that we saw inside the glass, and that's pretty straightforward also, pretty simple in fact. We're going to use the masking tools. So let's pause this, go back to the first frame. I want to import another clip. Actually, this is just a still image. It's a target file. And this was the workflow at EA, is everything was done with a black so that they can just switch to transfer mode to add, and it will basically do a Luma key automatically. We'll take the opacity of this down a little bit, and then I want to add a mask to that to reveal the crack over frames. So let's go and add a mask tool to that. So I throw on a rectangle mask, and now I can, let me step out of transparent mode. Go back to normal. So here's my mask. This is what I want to do. I want to animate that just to do that. So once again, turn on the Animate button. Position this anywhere I want it to be for the first frame, move in 10 frames or so, and we can just take this and just animate it up. So there we have our keyframe, right? Pretty cool. Next thing I want to do is I want to create smoke coming out of that crack, but this is where we want the smoke to look more realistic. Sorry, I dropped my water. So we're going to use the particle engine inside of Combustion. Let me turn off my rectangle mask just so we can see what I'm doing, and we'll go to our operators, the first frame, and I will add a particle. So here's the particle tools inside of Combustion. My OpenGL on this card is not the best, but we're going to deal with it. So they're 2D particles. There's hundreds and hundreds of these things that ship right out of the box. You can totally customize them. You can build your own, trade them, swap them with your friends, all the fun stuff we can do inside a user group such as this. We can go to different categories. Maybe I can find a smoke one. There's text particles. There's all different types of things. Am I in the right category? Let's go and choose smoke.
That's standard.
Yes, this is all out of the box. In fact, what this is a product called Particle Illusions. They bought a snapshot of it, version 2, that ships out of the box. It's like a $500 program itself. But it's integrated in Combustion like nothing else. Swirly mist, that's not what I want. Sorry, I should have had that organized. Let's see, yeah, we'll just use that. That's good enough. Okay, so now what I do here is I could create a point emitter, which would create smoke from just one spot. A line emitter is a free-form polygon, an elliptical, a rectangle, and a deflector. If I want to change the direction of things, I can use deflectors. But if I come in here, we can just quickly draw out shape like so. Again, it's all vector, so I can change and animate it later if I wanted to. When we start playing this, we now have got our smoke starting to drift out of it. Take a look at the control you have over this. The emitter itself is that line I drew. You can do such things as change the size, change the velocity, how fast it's going to shoot out. I can tint it green if I wanted to, so we have a nice green tint to it. The key thing to understand is everything I'm doing right now is at the emitter level. So if a particle has like 5 shapes, it'll affect all of them. If you select independent shapes, you can go to behaviors, where you can then affect each individual shape. I mean, the control gets pretty in-depth on what you can do with these particles. And like I said, there's hundreds out of the box. I am just going to import a rendered clip because I'm a good demo artist and I have it already done. So let me go and do that very quickly. Come down here and take our particle smoke. We open up this. Now if I zoom back and we move forward, we can see we've got our crack happening and the smoke coming out, okay? Now the next thing I want to do is I want to bring in that scientist that we saw and do some keying. But I'll do it a little differently. I'm going to act like we're multiple artists working together here. So I'm going to just go say File, Open, and we'll select that key footage and just bring it into my workspace. I'm not bringing it into the existing composite yet, because I want to show you this. Now if I go to the schematic, you can see what I mean. I'm just trying to stress the point that all of this is one project I'm working on. while this is a whole nother project, okay? So you can have as many composites to one and then manually feed them in as you're working. For example, let's step out, let's select that, and let's put a mask on this. Go back to the first frame to do that. I go to my masking tools, and I'll put a draw mask on here. Anybody familiar with a product called Combustion? Doesn't exist anymore. Okay.
I am.
Combustion had a thing called B-splines. Let me first just, a Bezier spline, everyone's always had Bezier splines. You know, you click and you drag, you create a curve. If you don't click and drag, it's a straight line. This is a Bezier, it's been around forever. Nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying you're not going to use them, but we had a lot of users who are ex-Combustion users asking us for these, and it's called B-splines. And you still create a shape with control points, but instead of having those Bezier tangent handles, what you have is a weighted control of how far, let me invert that, how far the object or the mask is away from the shape. It just creates a very organic looking shape, especially when you're doing masking and stuff like that. Again, just totally on client requesting this. So next thing I need to do is animate that, obviously. He's going to be moving back. We can animate the mask very easily and very quickly. Let me go, and I want to, first of all, let me turn on an option called Show Outline Only, which allows me to see through my mask. But I can select all these control points at once, turn on the Animate button, start to position them where I want them to be for the first frame. We move in, we say, okay, well, let's animate this, take it further, move up, just go frame by frame, and let Combustion do most of the work. You can see it's animating the mask. Look, I got to fine-tune that a little bit. So let's go here, just make that adjustment. Then maybe we want to go to the top part here, take these guys and just start animating them off. And at one point, I think we're just going to take the whole mask as a whole and just start shifting it off. So we just take it off frame. Let me create another mask for the other side, which we don't need to animate. And I can just use my good old-fashioned Bezier splines for that. So click, 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 okay, like so. So now I've got my mask done, now I want to put a keyer on here. So let's go here, and I'm going to go to my menu, operator, and I'm going to put a keyer. I'm going to put what we call a diamond keyer on here. This is new technology, again, from Flame, Flint, and Inferno. Hold on, my other mask needs to be adjusted. There we go. Okay, so I want to do a key. Let's just get our picker, and we click and drag in here. Sample this out, start pulling the key. Again, we can look at different modes. We want to look at the alpha, see where we're having problems, where we're not having problems. I can start trying to add more tolerance to this to kind of clean that up. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is color suppression. I don't care how well you shoot your green screen, you're going to have color spill. Let me take this up to a higher quality so we can see this. So we've got all that green spill happening in there, right? And you can go and try to adjust it with color correctors, but what's nice is we have tools designed just for that. For example, we go here and we choose from a keen. I'll choose my color suppression tool, and then we go here and I can now plot that color. I can say, where is that green? So you can see right there in my spectrum, it's jumping around telling me where it's at. I can say, let's suppress that. Come in here and we can add a control point and just pull the green right out of there. Now it looks a lot nicer. Maybe I want to shrink the edge a little bit. I can go and add another operator on top of that, another keying operator. So we come here and we say keying, and we're going to go and throw a, let's see, matte control, and then I can take that and I can shrink it a little bit. Maybe not that, I gotta be at the right level so we can see it, there we go. Maybe not that much, just bring it back a little bit. Okay, now, this is a tip for anyone using the product. Any point in your work production, you can do what's called a commit to disk. What that means is you're going to pre-render your data flow at that point. So instead of me taking that and having to calculate all this stuff every single time, if you right-click, you can choose Commit to Disk. It's basically just a pre-render. I can go out now and select anything I want, such as this guy here, and say pre-render that for me. Now, if we go into the schematic view, you can see what I just did. Instead of having to calculate all of this every time I cache this in, I rendered out the file. So it's an individual file, but you always have access to get to the original if need be, because it gives you what's called a switcher. You'll notice that right now, this is the main input going into this, but if I switch back, you'll notice that now this is the main input. So you're not throwing it away, you are pre-rendering it. The whole point of that is, I want to take this one right here and feed that into my composite, instead of taking all that other stuff. So I come here and say, give me a new layer. We step back out of the composite and look who's in our room now. We can come back here and we've got our friendly neighborhood doctor now in the room. And the next thing I want to do is I want to add that flashing light that we see on the screen, telling them to get out of there, danger, warning, all that fun stuff. So let's go here and say File Import. I go in and select this red flash. Good time. I'm not doing too bad. Let's go here and say switch that to an add, and then I can switch it over, move it where I want it to be. Come on, mouse. Over here, boy. There you go. Put it there, and we can also angle it a little bit. Now, what I want to do is animate that opacity of that, like I said, but we're going to do that in our timeline, and we're going to use expressions. So expressions are JavaScript. It's ways of creating fast animations without having to manually do it. So I'm going to hit a hotkey so I can see just my opacity channel, and I'm going to go to graph mode so you can see it happen. And I click on my expression browser. Here's all these pre-made Java expressions. I do not know coding in any way whatsoever, and I don't ever want to learn it. I want to be able to just select things and click it. I'm an artist. I'm not a mathematician. So let's come in here and select this periodic state switch. I can set it to be more or less how many frequencies you want it to be. You can change it, the values. But when you click on it and say, OK, notice what just happened is I just created an animation of that flashing on and off because of the expression. If you do know JavaScript, more power to you. You can come in and you can JavaScript. You can go in there and code this and save this and export it, use it for other reasons. Also, what I like is the fact that I can change it any time. Again, by going back to my expression browser, I can come in here and say, well, actually, I want it to be more frequent, so I can just take this, increase my frequency amount up, like so, and say, OK, and my expression now updates. And now I'm done with my composite. I want to render it. So finally, we go to our render queue. And I don't want to render this one. I render this one. And what I want to do is I need a QuickTime file, the best quality, right? So I set that up. But I also want a low-res version of this. So I say add another output. I select that one and say, yeah, I want that QuickTime, but this one's only going to be medium draft. It's going to be half its size. I also needed to go to an FTP site. My client's waiting to see this immediately. And then I'm also going to have it email me because I'm going to be at the bar having a beer while this is rendering, so I know to get back to the office. So you can set that all up too. I've never used that email, never once. But it's there. But anyway, so then you can process this. So you can render as many as you want. You can network render with Combustion. Unlimited machines, you can set it up so if you got a whole Mac farm, you can have it rendering out to all these different machines if you're doing sequence files and so on. Any questions on any of that? Yes?
But particles, are they going to become 3D at some point?
I wanted to, of course, absolutely. We're working on them. The one thing that is interesting to me is that these particles actually went into Flame in the last release of Flame. The Flame has a much larger development team than Combustion does, and hopefully we're going to be trickling down what they're doing to it. That's all I can really say. Okay.
Well, I would like to thank you for coming to our user group, for coming up from Chicago.
Yep.
And on va aller à une pause. Fait que si jamais vous avez des questions pour Ken, vous allez pouvoir lui demander des questions. Et j'aimerais lui laisser parler de ses DVD de formation. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, this is a training DVD I make. It's 34 hours long, but don't worry, you have a pause button, and you also have a rewind button. But it covers Combustion inside and out. I retail it for $300 US. We're giving away a copy here. We raffled off at the end. If anyone's interested in free tutorials also about Combustion, you can go to The Street, Larue in French, get it? Okay. TheStreetProductions.com, and that's my website. And I literally have probably 50, 60 free download QuickTime things there, all different tips and tricks, just trying to help build the community in Combustion. And you can also obviously purchase DVDs there. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.